The Fracture Line, a story of leadership and respect. The air in the conference room was already thick with the tension of an impending launch, but Marcus Thorne, head of operations, was about to make it unbreathable. He stood, palms flat on the mahogany table, his gaze fixed on David Chen, the head of quality. Another delay, David. Another phantom risk. Marcus's voice was a low growl. David, unflinching, presented his tablet. The data shows a potential variability in the final crystallization step, Marcus. It's a low probability, but if it occurs, the entire batch could be non-compliant. Marcus slammed his hand on the table, rattling the water glasses. I don't have time for low probabilities. I have a launch date. Get your team in line, or I'll find someone who can. The threat hung in the air, a toxic vapor. The other leaders, Lena from R&D, Omar from supply chain, stared at their notes, suddenly finding them fascinating. The silence that followed was not one of agreement, but of shock. A fracture line had just been created. The chill from the boardroom followed David back to the quality assurance lab. He gathered his senior analysts, but the usual lively debate about process improvement was gone. Fear had replaced it. Just stick to the approved SOPs, one analyst said, her voice barely a whisper. Don't look for trouble. You heard what happened. David saw the shift immediately. His team, once a proactive defense against risk, was retreating into a reactive shell. They would follow the rules to the letter, but the spirit of continuous improvement, the very thing that prevented disasters, was extinguished. They would no longer raise a hand to point out a potential storm on the horizon. They would simply wait for the rain, armed with the corporate-approved umbrella. Motivation plummeted, replaced by a quiet, corrosive cynicism. The best people started updating their resumes. News of the confrontation spread through the company's digital and social channels like a contagion. In the R&D wing, Dr. Lena Petrova stared at a spectrograph reading that showed a minor, intermittent impurity in the new API synthesis pathway. It was likely insignificant, but it was also unexpected. Her first instinct was to flag it for cross-functional review. Her second, more powerful instinct was the memory of David Chen's public humiliation. Would she be labeled an alarmist, a roadblock? Her junior scientist, eager to impress, suggested they run a few more tests on their own. Let's be absolutely sure before we raise a red flag, Lena agreed, the words tasting like compromise. This small, seemingly prudent decision was a symptom of the new culture. Harmony, even a false one, was now valued more than truth. For Marcus Thorne's operations team, the message was interpreted differently. The ends justify the means. Empowered by their leader's aggressive stance, a shift supervisor decided to make a minor, undocumented adjustment to a reactor's heating cycle to shave 12 minutes off the batch time. Marcus wants speed, we'll give him speed, he told a junior operator. Quality is just slowing us down. The change wasn't logged, the deviation wasn't reported. It was a small shortcut, one of a dozen that began to occur across the production line. Teamwork transformed into tribalism. The operations team saw themselves as the doers and quality as the blockers, creating a dangerous divide where critical information was no longer shared. The tremors reached Omar Abbas in supply chain. His logistics for the launch were timed to the hour, but the information he needed was becoming unreliable. Operations was promising accelerated delivery dates that quality wouldn't confirm. R&D was suddenly silent on final yield projections. Omar found himself making calls to chase down data that used to flow freely. He was managing risk with incomplete information, a professional nightmare. The lack of trust between the functional leaders had shattered the integrated planning process, forcing each department to operate in a silo, protecting its own interests. The system's harmony was gone, replaced by a cacophony of disjointed efforts. The fracture line finally broke. 2 weeks before the scheduled regulatory inspection, a diligent internal auditor was reconciling batch records and noticed a recurring, minuscule energy consumption anomaly in Reactor 4. It didn't make sense. Cross-referencing with QA's retained samples, he found David Chen. Together, they connected the energy anomaly to the undocumented heating cycle change. Worse, when they tested the affected batches, they found trace amounts of the very same impurity Lena Petrova had hesitated to report. It was a near miss of catastrophic proportions. Had a single batch reached the market, it would have triggered a full recall, regulatory action, and a public health scare. Quality and compliance were not just compromised, they were on the verge of collapse. The CEO, Anya Sharma, called an emergency meeting of the leadership team. The launch was on indefinite hold. The mood was funereal. "I have read the audit report," she began, her voice calm but edged with steel. "It details a series of failures in process, communication, and judgment. But a report doesn't tell me the why. I want to know how we got here." Marcus started to defend his team's actions, but Anya held up a hand. "This isn't about one team, Marcus. This is about our team. The failure started in this room. It started with how we speak to one another." She looked around the table, making eye contact with each leader. The silence was heavy with unspoken admissions. A leader's words are not just words. They are tools that build or demolish the culture, Anya stated, her voice resonating with authority. When we use threats, we demolish psychological safety. When we prioritize speed over integrity, we demolish quality. When we silence debate, we demolish risk management. "The behavior I witnessed," she said, looking pointedly at Marcus, "was not just disrespectful, it was a direct threat to the mission of this company and the safety of our patients. That ends today. We are installing a new operating system, not for our machines, but for our leadership." The Leadership Operating System, a charter for respectful engagement. 1. Our charter, the foundation of trust. Mission first, ego last. We are all stewards of the company's mission. We challenge ideas, not people. Safety to speak. Every voice has value. We commit to creating an environment where raising concerns is seen as an act of loyalty. Assume positive intent. We begin every interaction with the belief that our colleagues are competent and acting in the company's best interest. Disagree and commit. We encourage robust debate. Once a decision is made, we all commit to its success, regardless of our initial position. Our scripts for constructive conversation. To challenge an idea. Help me understand the data behind that assumption. What risks have we considered with this approach? An alternative perspective might be to express concern. "I'm not comfortable proceeding until we clarify X. From my functional perspective, this raises a potential compliance flag." To mediate conflict. "It sounds like we have two competing priorities here, speed and safety. Let's map them both out. Marcus, what do you need from David to feel confident? David, what do you need from Marcus?" The Leadership Operating System, measurement and accountability. 3. Our metrics, tracking our performance. Psychological safety score. Quarterly, anonymous surveys will measure the team's perception of safety to speak up and take risks. Decision velocity and quality. We will track the time from issue identification to resolution, alongside the quality of the outcome. Healthy debate should accelerate, not delay, sound decisions. Cross-functional project success rate. The ultimate measure of our collaborative health, tracked and reviewed monthly. Our consequences? Upholding the standard. Intervention. Any leader observing a violation of the charter is empowered and required to pause the conversation and refer to our agreed-upon scripts. Coaching. Repeated violations will result in mandatory executive coaching on communication and leadership. Performance review. Adherence to this operating system will be a significant, weighted component of every leader's annual performance review and compensation. Removal. We will not tolerate leaders who consistently demonstrate an inability or unwillingness to engage respectfully. Our mission is too important. Anya looked at her team. This is our playbook. Learn it, live it. Our success depends on it.